Don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years. Welcome to the Savvy and JB show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am one of your hosts, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of y'all here today. Welcome, Savvy Sabs. Oh, you're muted.
What's going on, JB?
Good to see you here. Just let everybody know the Savvy and JB show is every single Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also find Savvy on her show later this evening at 8 p.m. Right, Sabs?
That's right.
All right. And you can also find me here back on Revolutionary Blackout Network on Sundays at 1 p.m. for the JB show. And you can find me on my own channel, on the JB Font channel, every single Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Go ahead and do the things. Do give a like so that pushes us out in the algorithm so we can also help to activate and also inform and inspire. So thank you so very much for that. Also, if you guys have you got onto our mailing list? You guys can go to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live, upload clips, or in future have any articles that are written. So you guys have that there. Also, if you guys would like to email us for any type of inquiries, any suggestions, any stories, then you guys can email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. I'm going to say a blanket hello to everybody who is in the chat. So good to have all of you here with us to join us for this great conversation that we're going to be having. But as always, whenever we have a guest, we want to be very respectful of their time. And I want to make sure that we get right to it. So what are we talking about today? Well, it's going to be interesting because it's post-election, and this is what we're going to be getting into. We're going to be talking to Dr. Boyce Watkins. And the question is, where do Black Americans go from here? This is a question that has been raised on different platforms, on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky, all of them, Instagram. And we're asking this question of where we go. Because if we don't know where we're going, then do we even know where we've been? So, introducing Dr. Boyce Watkins, join us today. So good to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the questions that I had, and this is actually my initial question. Your initial thoughts about the results of the election. Were you surprised? Were you shocked? Where is it just a confirmation of what you already knew was going to happen? What was it?
I was blown away. I was incredibly shocked. I did not think it was going to be a landslide like that. And I even put my money on it. I saw where Robinhood had odds of Trump winning and Kamala winning, and they had Kamala's odds down to 30%. And I said, that's not right. It's a 50-50. That's what mainstream media said. And I believe that. And so I actually invested in Kamala. But to be quite frank with you, I didn't really I voted for Cornel West. I didn't vote for either one of them, to tell you the truth. But I put my money on Kamala because I said, well, the odds are in my favor. So let's, if the coin toss works out. And so I lost money, and I just didn't believe. I saw just this unbelievable disconnect between what the mainstream media was saying, what the celebrities were saying versus what the people actually said when they got in the voting booth. I mean, it wasn't up to question. Even Barack Obama said it's going to take a few days to figure out who the winner is. Oh, we knew before the dang thing was over. It was crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say JB and I predicted that he would get 312, that he would win every state. Yeah.
Wow. You know what? Y'all, hats off to y'all. Y'all were much smarter than me when it came to the election. I remember I said, because here's the thing, there was this guy, I don't remember his name, but some guru, and see the gurus are all being checked right now. Everything's being questioned, right? So there was a guru who had predicted with using the scientific method that he came up with. He'd actually predicted the last 10 elections. I'm sure y'all might have heard of this guy. And he predicted the Democrats are going to win. And he went through all the variables. I listened to his logic. I said, okay, that makes sense. And I remember I said to somebody, I said, well, it looks like Kamala's going to win. And it was one of my friends who happened to be a Trump supporter. And he said, are you sure about that? And I said, yeah, of course. So I was wrong. I was completely wrong on that. And I think that a lot of the election just taught us a lot about our country, a lot about ourselves. It taught us a lot about where America is right now, and that's just the reality.
Yeah, Alan Lichtman. I'm patting myself on the back, because I usually don't pat myself on the back, but I actually beat Alan Lichtman at his own game, so I had to pat myself on the back because I did predict that Donald Trump would win all of the swing states. But
hey brother, if I was in the same room with you, I'd be patting you on the back right now too. You deserve it. Go ahead and swim basket.
Yeah, but this is one of the only times I'll be able to do it because I'm wrong on a lot of stuff too. But I guess I can't let my head get too big. But one of the things that I actually wanted to ask you about was a tweet that you put out actually this morning. This was actually an interesting thing, and I wanted to get your expansion on this. You said the one good thing about losing this election is that the Democratic Party is going to change its approach to Black people. Mm-hmm. Dr. Boyce, do you really think that the Democratic Party would change its approach to Black people? And if so, how?
I think that they're going to realize that Black people, we're not as simple as they thought we were. We've become more politically sophisticated in the last 12, 13 years. The struggles of the Obama presidency, I'm not going to say the failure, because I think Barack was, I feel like he represented the country well. I like having a president that is smart and well-spoken. I didn't agree with all his policies. A lot of them I didn't agree with, but I like the fact that he's this guy that at least thinks about things before he says them. But that presidency taught Black people a lot about politics. It wasn't reciprocal. We gave him more than he gave us. And so what you had was a massive number of disenfranchised voters. I think that there was a philosophy that we could just ignore and disrespect the Black community and then show up at election time and tell them what to do, as long as we're connected to the leading Negroes, the Negro managers. They're not Black leaders, they're Negro managers. I'm talking about the pastors, the Al Sharpton types, maybe some rappers, and they're going to go tell the community what to do. They're all going to show up. And it did work to a point. I mean, millions of people, they saw Glorilla and Megan Thee Stallion, and they said, okay, I'm going to do what she's doing. But then there were millions of other people who said, no, we're not with that. A lot of Black men, in particular, did what men do, and women do this as well. Not to say women can't be intelligent and thoughtful about every choice they make, for sure. But the men basically said, what's in it for me? What's in it for us? I don't see it. I'm not going to do it just because you told me to do it. I'm going to do it because it makes sense to me. And I even had that conversation with members of my family. I said, I don't see anything in this party right now. This party is looking, it's looking awfully gay. It's looking very feminist. And I respect all of that. But that's not me. That's not what helps me to survive as a Black man in this society. So I'm going to go over here to Cornell West, and y'all, good luck. I hope it works out for y'all. And that was the perspective I think a lot of people felt.
Sorry, I have myself muted, but that's some interesting points. As far as the Black community, I think one of the things that has been abundantly clear is that as far as the Black community is concerned, we are no longer seen as a monolith. Mm-hmm. That has been wiped out. That's been washed away. Nobody can go, well, Black people all do this. Now you see, what is it, Sabs, was it in Wisconsin? Donald Trump got 22% of the Black vote?
Wow. What happened in Wisconsin was that Kamala Harris really underperformed in Milwaukee, which is where most Black residents live in Wisconsin. And so, for whatever he did, he was able to double his support between Black men in Wisconsin, primarily in Milwaukee. And it's not even just the swing states. He was able to increase his support in some of the blue states like California and New York and New Jersey. This was also happening when Biden was still the nominee too, by the way. So that this is not just Kamala. It was also happening under Joe Biden. I just want to be very clear about that. So there was a clear refusal of certain people supporting or continuing to support the Democratic Party as a whole. And we saw that with like some of the state elections as well, some of the local elections. It wasn't just against Kamala Harris. It was people not being happy about the direction that the Democratic Party was going in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so as far as, from my personal view, I think one of the biggest issues as far as the Democratic Party, learning to really play ball with the Black population, the Black Americans, I don't see it. I have zero faith in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party actually playing ball with Black people. The reason for it is because the people at the top, they take their marching orders from what I like to call the corporate dictators. And those corporate dictators are always going to expect fealty from those people who we like to call the heads of DNC, the heads of the RNC. And so ultimately, it's really a systemic thing versus, us being able to achieve anything in the system. And I go back to the revolutionary leaders who talked about how the need to change the system fundamentally from the ground up, especially focusing on the most marginalized and the people who are the poorest among us. Because if we don't focus on them for the most part and try to build up from there, then we're going to be stuck in this vicious cycle day in and day out, for time immemorial. So that's the way I see it as far as the Democrats. Will they ever be able to do it? No, not really. I think the end of this empire is pretty much finished. And it is indicative through people like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is not an aberration of this system. He is the feature. He is the full embodiment of the system. He's the full embodiment of what America is. I may come off as, kind of negative in that sense, but really I'm actually hopeful because I can see it, sundowning for something much better in the future.
Interesting. I'll say this. In every election, I don't vote Democrat or Republican. I just vote for Black people. And whatever that means, whatever is going to positively impact Black families, give us opportunities to shape our own destiny. That's what I support. I don't see a lot when I look at following Democrat Republican politics in particular is almost like watching the Cowboys play against the Steelers. I might pick a side, but I know the game isn't going to affect my life. Jerry Jones is not going to send me a check if the Cowboys ever get past the second round of the playoffs. Okay, so I'm not right, which may never happen. So my point is to say that I believe the Democrats may. I would be shocked if they did not shift their strategy, and I think that we might want to be careful about being sort of incarcerated by the moment. Right? Sometimes a moment can seem like a lifetime, and there have been times in history where one party just has so much momentum that it seemed like it was never going to change. I remember when Obama got elected. I mean, that man came in like a tidal wave. Wasn't no Republican blocking that, right? And we just felt like the whole country was going almost a one-party situation, especially in our community. There was no question who you were going to vote for the most part. In fact, a lot of the Trump supporters today that are Black voted for Obama. A large percentage of them did, right? But then you go back to the 90s, and you had right after Bill Clinton's election, when he had that wave of popularity, then 4 years later, the Republicans had the Republican Revolution, and that seemed like the wave at the time. That was when Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh started his career, and everybody was caught up in the right wing stuff, right? So I feel like it's just, the country ebbs and flows. The two-party system is crap. It's always going to be. I don't know when this gangsterism is going to be put to an end, because that's what it is. The Democrats, they bully. They bully out anybody that tries to form a third party. The Republicans have their own shenanigans, and it's unfair to the American people overall. And that's why a lot of people are not interested in being a part of an illegitimate system. But I think things can change very easily. Right now, the Republicans have a lot of momentum and a lot of power. I believe my personal perspective is that I saw what was going on with immigration. That was an easy slam dunk. for Trump. I mean, the immigration was just a mess. Even the Democrats, I think Eric Adams, that poor guy, he's now he's backpedaling. He's like, look, I didn't even want to do none of this, and he's really being honest, about what everybody saw. The immigration was insanity. I think also you had the inflation issue that came out of the pandemic. They did all that government spending, and if the price of everything shot up, a lot of people were sensitive to that. I also think that the Republicans, Trump in particular, handled the abortion issue really well. Right. He just said, look, I'll pass that back to the states. I'm going to let the states decide that. So that took away a lot of ammunition that the Harris administration could have used to say he's going to take your reproductive rights. Right. No, he's not. He said, no, I'm going to let every state make their own decision. And I think that kind of muted some of their attack. And generally, I really just think people wanted something different. I think that they went a little bit too far to the left. It's unfortunate that the Democrats got sort of hamstrung on this whole trans issue. I think there was a whole thing where, remember that ad where Charlemagne was saying, I don't want to pay money for a trans inmate to get a surgery, right? And then that became a big deal. They ran that ad like crazy. Well, there's only maybe like I think there's less than 30 or 40 people that would actually apply to, which really isn't that big of a deal in the national scene. But what is important is that bigger question of just, like, what are you representing? What ideology are you pursuing? Some of it started to look, in my view, almost clownish. When you got some big old muscular dude who's out running girls on the track and they're acting like that's supposed to be normal. And so I personally felt like, okay, this party, maybe there's somebody who relates to this nonsense, but I sure as hell don't. So I'm not participating. And the other thing that was really interesting was how when you had black men like myself, I put myself in this category, who just said, look, I ain't getting involved. I'm not going to go vote for the Republicans, but I'm not doing this Democrat stuff no more because I don't relate to it. You have people like the Obamas and others coming back saying, come back here, Negro. Like what are you doing with our vote? You ain't got no right to use your vote for yourself. And that was a backlash. A lot of people were like, screw you. You're not going to tell me what to do. And you're showing up like a long lost baby daddy, once every 4 years, trying to order us around like we're children. A lot of men were very much turned off by that. And I think it really kind of exposed the fact that Barack Obama doesn't have meaningful, relevant influence in the black community. He's a figurehead. He's like the Queen of England or something. But when you try to really come in like you got some real power, people push back and say, what have you actually done? They would have listened to Farrakhan before they listened to Barack Obama in a second. So there we go. That's my 2 cents on that.
So I actually think that the Democratic Party moved too far to the right. And I feel like it has been moving closer to the right over the years. And I'll give a couple of examples. Number one, Kamala Harris, whoever gave her this advice, and I don't know who did, I thought it was a horrible idea for her to add Liz Cheney to her campaign. We're facing a younger voter demographic that is very much against the wars, against imperialism. And Liz Cheney is a warmonger. That was just a terrible idea. Also, she goes against some of the things that Kamala Harris was running on. So I'm like, you're out there holding these rallies, talking about freedom and reproductive rights and all those types of things. And you're talking about the LGBTQ community. You got to remember how Liz Cheney voted on some of those measures when it comes to abortion, when it comes to the LGBTQ community. So that's one example. The other one was she flip-flopped on fracking. Now, I remember when she ran for president in 2020, she said she would ban fracking. She moved away from that because she thought that would help her in a state like Pennsylvania, right? So she was trying to go. Then when it came to the border, she said that she's going to be hawkish on the border, totally forgetting that she was put in charge of the border during the Biden-Harris administration and chose not to do anything. So I felt like Kamala Harris, with certain positions where she used to have somewhat progressive positions in 2020, she actually moved to the right on those issues to try to appease Republicans. Her campaign had this idea of trying to get these Nikki Haley voters, not thinking about at the end of the day, for the most part, Republicans vote for their party. And there's data that shows this. At the end of the day, for the most part, they're going to back their party regardless of who the nominee was. So I thought that was a terrible idea, failed strategy, even when it came to Israel and Gaza. She tried to both sides the situation. I don't think the Democratic Party realized just how important that particular issue was to younger voters. She lost the youth vote. She lost the Black vote. And I compared her numbers to Hillary Clinton, who also lost, and to Obama and to Biden. She lost the Latino vote. Like you can't win and you're losing all those different demographics. But when I think about moving left, I'm thinking about giving everybody health care. I'm thinking about handling an education issue, whether it's free public universities, something like that. Like those are left policies. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden continue to move to the right, especially on the economy. And I feel that's why they failed the way that they did. The numbers were always showing that Joe Biden was not headed for success. And when Kamala Harris jumped in the race, yes, the polls shot up a little bit, but I predicted as we got closer to the election, she was not going to continue to grow. So I think that the Democratic Party has relied on a lot of advice from corporate billionaires, elites that are out of touch with working class people and working poor people. There's all this rhetoric about let's focus on the middle class. Who's in the middle class today? A lot of Americans are not a part of the middle class. So I think the Democratic Party did lose touch with the working class base. And I think that's why they are where they are.
Interesting. Well, I did hear Bernie Sanders say that. I heard Bernie Sanders also make that point that you made. I kind of feel like both parties care nothing about the middle class or the working class, especially working class and poor. I just don't see it, or if you even talk about Gaza, is Trump going to go and, support the Palestinian people any better than Biden did? We know who runs the government. We know who has the money, who owns, pretty much every politician. So that's interesting. You bring that up. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think that everything you said was accurate. But I'm just trying to figure out what would make a 25-year-old switch or just say, I'm not going to vote for the Democrats. I'm going to go vote for Trump. Let's take the Gaza issue, right? I'm really upset because they're not doing enough. And look at what they're doing in the Middle East right now to those poor Palestinian people. But I'm going to turn to Donald Trump now. I just don't see that. Maybe you can educate me on that part.
Yeah, so I actually had that conversation with Arab American voters in Michigan and from other parts of the country as well. They are very much aware that Donald Trump was not going to be good on this issue. The point that they wanted to make is that they were not going to reward Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for what they have done. And then also Gaza is pretty much almost flattened anyway. So this is the way that they had explained it to me. They did not want this administration or one of the people from the administration to continue on in the White House. So that's the way that they voiced that. What would make people switch over? I mean, and JB and I voted for Jill Stein, just FYI. We didn't vote for Donald Trump.
Well, my wife did too.
Yeah. So what would make people switch over? What I have noticed over the years is that I think people jump to the other side when the economy is in such disarray. So, for example, Biden won in 2020. What was going on at that time? We had the pandemic. Those of us that live in states that were locked down, people lost their businesses, people lost their jobs, especially if you owned a small business. So that was an attack on the current administration about the economy at that time. People say it's because of Trump's rhetoric. I don't agree with that. I think if the pandemic was not an issue, if that didn't happen, I think Trump would have won re-election. So at the time, the economy was a mess. That's how Joe Biden wins. The problem, I think, for the Democratic Party is that they looked at Joe Biden's run and they said, well, Joe Biden, won, and he ran on a very, moderate campaign, didn't go too far to the left or whatever. But they didn't take into account the pandemic. It wasn't that everybody loved Joe Biden. People just wanted to vote against Donald Trump because of what was going on economically at that point in time. There were a number of people that I know that voted for Trump in 2016. Come pandemic, they're like, nope, I'm going to vote for Biden this time around. Same thing this time. There were a number of people I know that voted for Biden, but this time around they said, I'm tired of this. The inflation's too high. I'm voting for Donald Trump. Economic reasons are one of the reasons that made people just go all the way over to the other side. But also this happens because the Democratic Party never established a strong working class agenda. Not in my lifetime. Everyone brings up FDR. I wasn't alive during then. I don't remember the Democratic Party doing anything for the people. Like you mentioned Obama. Obama went to Flint, Michigan, and he pretended to drink dirty water in front of a room full of Black people in Flint, Michigan.
I remember
Black wealth tanked under Barack Obama's presidency.
He did.
So people don't forget these things. And the Democratic Party has relied on identity politics, and we're not Trump. For the past, since 2016, this is what they've been relying on. This is a Black woman, vote for her. Hillary Clinton's a woman. Don't you want a woman president? Vote for her. They have not been meeting the needs of working class people in this country. We haven't even raised the minimum wage. Why is the federal minimum wage still $7.25 an hour? Like these are the basic things. And I think Bernie Sanders had the right idea when we talk about the economics, when we talk about the minimum wage, and I advocate for a living wage. I don't even think people can live off $15 an hour now. But I think he had the right message with we have to help the working class. We have to help the working people. Now, do I wish he had other things added? Yeah, I wish he would have had a reparations platform. I really do, but he didn't. So I think that they have totally missed the ball. And when we look at strategy, right now, the Democratic Party is considering Rahm Emanuel to be the DNC chair. The guy who closed all those schools in Chicago, they haven't learned a thing. They have been captured by the corporate class. They've been captured by elites. They've been captured by these Ivy League graduates. And I just feel like they are completely out of touch with everyday people.
Yeah. If I can add, as far as the Democratic and Republican Party are concerned, because they have a monopoly, this is why we call them the duopoly. They have a monopoly essentially on where you can go as far as voicing your vote. People oscillate between either this side or that side. And what the Democratic Party has done wrong is they have tokenized marginalized groups. Because let's be real, when it comes to LGBTQ people, the Democratic Party does not care about us, right? When it comes to immigrants, the Democratic Party does not care about us. When it comes to Black people, the Democratic Party, especially Black Americans, the Democratic Party does not care about us. When it comes to poor and poor white people, the Democratic Party does not care about us. They do not care because the thing is, and people look at me weird when I say this, that they are literally in cahoots for the Republican Party because it's a good cop, bad cop situation. It's like, hey, look at me. I'm going to do all these things for you, but you better do exactly what I say or that guy's going to go after you. And then they will dangle your rights in front of your face and say, well, you better do what I say. But then when it comes to actually handing your rights to you, handing you actually tangibles, they don't do it.
No.
Why? Because they need you to donate to their ActBlue or to their Republican equivalent every single time. The Republicans do to poor white people what the Democratic Party does to Black Americans. Yeah. And this is one of the things that I tell everybody to leave both parties. And, good on you for voting third party, Dr. Boyce. The thing is that a lot of people are honestly, they're so out of sorts because they're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and they have no time to actually research what's going on. So what do? They click on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, Newsmax, and then they're saying, oh, well, it's either Democrat or Republican. And so then there's no actual real tangible, party for them to actually go to that will actually address the needs of the working people, the people who are poor and destitute in this country. And then once you have those people, unfortunately, oscillating between those two, they say, well, there's no real point. And to me, to oscillate between these two, because they're both basically the same. And everybody pretty much knows it. So a lot of people just check out. And so then once they check out, then guess what? The pool gets smaller. And so it only takes a few less people either to win on one side or to win on the other side. This is why, even though the Republican Party actually won, they got less votes than they did last time, but they got even more votes than the Democrats, so they still won. And so, when it comes to, the tokenization, right? The tokenization of being actually woke, right? Because being really woke is actually a positive thing, but they tokenized it. They tokenized it, and they used it. They tokenized us Black people and said, look, we got a Black woman, right? While not telling us that she was biracial. And so the thing is, the problem is actually the tokenization. With all the things with the rainbow flags and stuff, like they don't give a damn about actually LGBTQ people, because if they actually did, then they would actually be doing tangible things in order to make sure that housing, healthcare, education, and all these different things would actually go to help them, but they don't care. And so that's one of the things that I've seen is the huge tokenization of marginalized communities. And this is one of the things, and they're going to continue to keep doing it, because as long as you see Raytheon with a rainbow flag, it's tokenization all day.
Y'all both made some great points, and I'll say this. I'm trained in money, so when I see something weird going on, I always follow the money. And one of the biggest mistakes that America ever made was to let money really get into your politics, because money is powerful, and money can be wonderful, but it can also be a poison. And what occurred, with decisions like Citizens United and stuff like that, where they just started letting all this money into politics, is that you've gotten into this game played by the elites, where the American people are just pawns in the game. They know they technically need votes to get elected, but who's going to get you those votes? Why did Kamala raise over $1 billion to run for president? Well, so she could run a bunch of ad campaigns and get you riled up over whatever social issue you care about, and or scare you. Like, fear is proven. Studies show that fear is the most effective way to get people to vote. It's the most effective way to get people to buy things. It's the most effective way to get people to read newspapers. Fear. So fear is low vibrational energy. So if they keep you on that low frequency, then they can manage and control you much more effectively. So think about it. We don't vote out of desire. We don't say, okay, I'm voting for this person because I like them and I'm going to have a better life. We vote because we're afraid of the other party, right? We're being told the story. If you don't vote for us, then has anybody seen Project 2025? Remember the BET Awards where Taraji's like, look up Project 2025, y'all. Look it up, y'all. Look up 20, and then on the other side, same thing's happening. I mean, just this fear mongering. It's insanity. And I didn't fall for it, but I know a lot of people who did. And I could not have debates with these individuals, because when you're in that heightened state of fear, you're not logical. You're not trying to prosper and succeed. You're trying to survive. You're in survival mode. So having a conversation is impossible, because all you're going to do is tell me that I'm crazy, because if he gets in office, then we're all going to die. And I remember Diddy's campaign, vote or die, right? You don't vote, you're going to be dead. I remember when I think didn't Biden say something like they're gonna have y'all in chains again? Did he say that to Black? They're gonna have y'all back in chains, this is a tried and true tactic, and so fear is always there, and so nobody really votes for anybody anymore. They vote against something else. I'm protecting America from this horrible outcome. And then the other piece with the money, circling back on that, I see politics as a game where wealthy people, like say the crypto companies, because here's what happened with the crypto guys and the tech guys. They're trying to maximize shareholder wealth. They're trying to make money. Their problem was regulation. The Biden administration, Gary Gensler, kept suing the crypto companies for no reason. So they're all pissed off because their companies can't prosper because they're scared to death of Gary Gensler, the SEC chairman. So Trump comes along and says, if you back me financially, I'll get rid of Gary Gensler. So they say, great. They give him a few $100 million. Then he goes to the tech giants in Silicon Valley and says, okay, I know you're under all these antitrust investigations and stuff like that from the FTC. Elect me, give me money to run, and I'll get rid of all that. I'm going to go for deregulation. So suddenly a lot of Silicon Valley switching over to support Trump. Elon Musk, a guy that he hated a few years ago, suddenly they have common ground, because why? Well, because Elon Musk wants more money for his EVs and his rocket ships. And also he seems to have a personal issue with some of the policies of the Democratic Party, particularly with things like online censorship, which was really horrible during the pandemic. I had 700,000 Instagram followers during the pandemic. They just took my page down because I shared something about ivermectin or something. They took it down. There was no due process. Nobody got on the phone and told us what was going on. So I said to rebuild. I you just keep going. But I was pissed. It took 7 years to do that, right? So this is the kind of shit that they were doing, and that I know personally that pissed me off, right? You're telling me that it's the Republicans who are going to steal our freedom, but I sat through a pandemic where I watched Harvard-educated doctors get censored because they disagreed with Fauci. Are you serious? Fuck you. You know, like, are you kidding? You're telling me they're going to take my freedom? You already took it. So the point to me was like, look, I don't know. I'm not ready to be no Republican. I ain't never gonna wear no MAGA hat. That's not my thing. I'm not interested in that. But I'm not trying to be a Democrat anymore. And so you know, maybe I was a microcosm of what I think a lot of people felt. I loved Obama. I believed in Obama. I supported that man. I supported him before everyone else did. I went on to CNN when he had 5% of the vote, and I said, "This guy's good. I think he might beat Hillary Clinton. You better watch out." And lo and behold, he made history. But I was so disappointed. I think a lot of Black folks were disappointed. I know a lot of Black folks in the streets of the city of Chicago who are seeing all these immigrants coming and getting resources that they were denied all these years. Politicians are blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid, ain't listening to a word that they're saying, but yet they were the ones in your neighborhood asking for your vote. Well, why in the hell would you keep supporting people who only know who you are, where you at when they're trying to get something from you? That is exploitation. So long story short, this election was basically a long time coming. I don't know what the future is going to hold. Now the ball's back in the Republicans' court. I'm curious to see what they do with things. But something, I think people feel like anything other than what we've had is an improvement because at least we have a chance to do something better. Like this whole idea of the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. I want to see what happens because you can't sustain a government with that level of spending. You're gonna collapse. The dollar will collapse if you continue to do this. So I want to see. I'm like, okay, so what happens if we go in and we cut government agencies the same way Elon cut Twitter? Y'all saw what happened when he went in and he took over Twitter. I didn't think it was a good idea. I was like, what is he doing? He overpaid for this thing. But he went in and found all the fat and sawed it all off, and then he exposed the fat as he was doing it. I thought that was amazing. I love seeing that. I would love to see him do the exact same thing with the government because our country needs some kind of a fix.
I would say I'm totally fine with them cutting the FBI and the CIA.
Yeah, because I want Assata Shakur to come home.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yep. One of the things that I wanted to go into was to talk about Trump's different cabinet appointments. Look, I was at dialysis yesterday. I was on my phone scrolling. Let me do a reenactment. I was on my phone. I was at dialysis. I was scrolling. And I was like looking at after appointment. I'm like, what the hell is this man thinking of? Marco Rubio? Look, I live in Florida. Look, go ahead. Pray for me if you need to. I live in Florida. Marco Rubio? Little Marco? Are you kidding? Look, let's get into it because this dude he had me scratching you know what? I wasn't scratching my head. I was laughing because I was like, some of you people who are MAGA, who thought that Donald Trump was anti-war, you were, like Donald Trump says, wrong. They were wrong. Yeah. Hang on, let me get this. This is out of the Washington Post. Talked about actually all of Donald Trump's picks, right? So, of course, we all knew J.D. Vance, right? But Secretary of State Marco Rubio, which he is a neocon's neocon. And I just want your reaction to some of these appointments and what are your thoughts on them? Because I just look at it like Donald Trump basically has egg on his face for some of these appointments.
You know, I'm not really qualified to give detailed analysis of these individuals. Okay. I have seen, when he makes an appointment, I look it up and I think things through. I like Robert Kennedy. You know, I hope that he's in there. I don't have a big issue with his affiliation with Musk because Musk is a person that executes things. I also don't hate Trump as much as a lot of people do. I don't love him or hate him. I just observe him and I see the good and the bad. I followed him since I was probably 19 years old. And I remember the time when he was admired for being able to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. And he's shown some genius in that regard. However, there's also, in my view, a lot of corruption that took place along the way. Like when he built a $400 million hotel at the age of 28 in the 1970s, it was almost impossible to get a construction project done that big without being connected to the mafia somehow, because the mob kind of controlled a lot of construction in New York at that time. Also, when you're to casinos and you're dealing with Russian people, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely some stuff there that's a problem. However, at the same time, when I study Donald Trump's history, I do see him as a person, while he certainly has significant personality issues, perhaps some narcissism, he seems to be a person that really loves his country in his way. He seems like a person, he and Elon Musk seem like people that are arrogant enough to think they can really save the world. And the world has confirmed that by giving them both billions of dollars to work with. And I think that some areas in terms of problems in our society, I think they see what a lot of us see. And I also look forward to seeing what happens when you have businessmen running the government that also have their own type of patriotism. Now, sure, it is a white male leaning sort of patriotism. And you look at right there, those are white guys for the most part. And I personally don't consider them to be the number one ally for the black community, but that doesn't mean we can't have things in common. So one thing about Trump that's interesting too is that when you look at his history, he's always been a leader. Even when he was 10, 11 years old in military school, he's been a leader. He's been a fighter. And he's been a patriot in his own way. And so now that he's president, on the downside of that is that just kind of confirms his inflated ego already. But I do think that he's trying his best to make the right decisions. I think he'll be a better president than he was in 2016 because experience matters. I don't think that he is a person that is anti-war, and I don't see him as a warmonger. I feel like he could possibly be a balanced middle in the sense that he knows how to show strength, and I think that he's showing the world and that America is not playing around. We're not trying to be, liberal pussies anymore. And to be honest with you, my father was a soldier and a police commander, and I kind of understand that. That's what I grew up around, where you can't be nice. You can't always be a good man and a great man at the same time. So I don't see Trump as a good man, and I think he might possibly be a great man. As far as leadership and the quality of his appointments, I do question some of the things there, like you're talking about, like the guy, the defense secretary, doesn't seem to have the experience for that role. And I think that that's where Trump's connection to his loyalists may be a flaw, right? He seems like a guy that, because he doesn't know who to trust, he's kind of operating in this gangster mode of, I'd rather have people around me that I can trust who are mediocre than to have extraordinary people around me that I can't trust. And if you listen to some of the military guys talk, I think there was a Navy SEAL who said if you had a chart where you had skill on the y-axis and loyalty on the x-axis, you got the people that are highly skilled and highly loyal. That's obviously preferred. But if you had a choice between someone who isn't that loyal, who's highly skilled, versus someone who's mediocre, who's very loyal, you pick the person who's mediocre, who's extremely loyal. So I think that's where I personally see this as a display of Trump's ego. He relates to mostly white males because he feels somehow that, I guess, they've been oppressed because of diversity and DEI and all that. So that's their thing, I guess. But also, I think he's just looking for people that he knows are going to help him execute the plan without him feeling like he's going to be betrayed. I know a guy that was at a meeting, Kanye West, who's just interesting. He's up and down. Kanye and this other guy, they went out to Trump's house. And I don't know if you remember that. They had a dinner at Mar-a-Lago. And it turned out the other guy, Nick Fuentes, was, I guess he's something neo-Nazi or something. I don't know what the hell, something like that, right? So they went out to the house and Trump invites them in. My friend described it to me personally. He said, yeah, he was very nice to us. He treated us well and he sat us down and he was very friendly and personable. And then he gets a call. And basically the guy called him and said, you're being set up. They're trying to say that you were sitting with a neo-Nazi or whatever Fuentes is supposed to be. And so Trump immediately, he said his whole tone just changed. He got cold. He said, okay, get out. I need y'all to go, because this is the thing. Even though Trump is not always a good man, I don't disagree with any of that. He hasn't been treated fairly. I think that all these prosecutions are politically motivated. They wouldn't have done this to him if he was a Democrat. And what's probably pissing them off the most is that everything they've done to destroy him, he's been able to use it to make himself stronger. I think if they hadn't done these things, they might have had a chance to win the election, because every time you do something that looks like a shenanigan, I think there are millions of people who see right through it, and it makes you look desperate and weak and corrupt. So that's my assessment. Again, I know you asked about the appointments in particular. I'm still learning. I'm willing to give them a chance. But at the same time, I think that this election was kind of a reckoning that, that look, America's changed. People are not getting all their information from CNN and MSNBC anymore. And that's why you see these coalitions on the left kind of folding. You see people kind of freaking out. Even Joy Reid is starting to change her tone because I think that they're learning that America is a different kind of country and people have more information than they had before.
Yeah, just in heads up. I don't know if everybody knows about this, but it seems like it's now announced that Donald Trump is going to announce RFK Jr. as his Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. Just FYI, that just broke.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like Kennedy. I just do. I'll tell you. I didn't want any politicians on my platform. I don't like politicians that much. Kennedy reached out and I told them no, because I just don't like politicians. I did have Cornel West on because I've known him a long time and he's a good person. But Kennedy, the more I learned about him, the more I actually regretted my decision not to talk to him. I have to admit, also just listening to him talk for a long time, it really hurts my ears. But I'm just keep it real. But at the same time, and I'm into just solutions, but I can tell you, I think he's a guy that loves the country in his own way. He sees what a lot of us see, right? He sees that how the FDA has been killing people for a long time. And I like the fact that he's brought these things out. He also mentioned something that I really liked, where he said that basically all this money that they're allegedly giving to Ukraine is just money laundering. That they give the money to Ukraine, they tell Ukraine, okay, you got to upgrade your weapon systems and you have to use, Lockheed Martin or Raytheon to do it. And so it becomes money laundering for corporations that put certain people in office to do it, and so when a guy speaks like that, it does make me trust him a little bit more. And I think he's a breath of fresh air for that role. I look forward to seeing him in that position.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to get the correct He doesn't seem to be able to apply that to Israel, though. When it comes to Israel and Gaza, he has said some things about Palestinian people that is horrendous. On Breaking Points, on other interviews, like just absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was a disaster for him to align himself with Rabbi Shmuley. Just terrible choices for his campaign and for himself, in my opinion. But I'm curious. I want to get your thoughts on the meltdown. There are a number of Democrat politicians that have come forward now, and they are very frustrated with the way that Kamala's campaign was run and the way that Joe Biden exited the race. Now, obviously, when these things happened, they didn't say anything.
Right.
They were quiet. But Nancy Pelosi is now doing interviews telling people that Joe Biden waited too long and he should have gotten out of the race sooner. Ro Khanna was just did a couple of interviews recently where he said this was a poorly ran campaign about Kamala Harris, that she should have focused on economic issues. Just a number of them are coming forward. And obviously those statements from them would have been more beneficial during the time that Kamala was running, just keeping it real. But they don't want to turn on the party. They don't want to criticize the party. And I guess they especially didn't want to criticize Kamala Harris's campaign. But I want to get your opinion about that. How do you feel about people speaking up about this now that she lost? Because I feel like if she would have won, we would have never heard this.
Right. And that's, there's something in psychology called self-attribution bias, where if you ask somebody about their favorite basketball team and you say, okay, did they win or lose? If the team won, people will usually say, yeah, we won. But if the team lost, they'll say, yeah, they lost. So what happens is we attach ourselves to the winning team. And then when you lose, you distance yourself. There's a natural tendency to distance yourself from something that is an embarrassment or whatever. This was an embarrassment. This was a blowout. The team lost by 30 points and they got dunked on the whole time. So who wants to be on a team like that? So I'm not surprised by any of this. I also will say that, again, you had mentioned earlier how we over focus on identity politics, but I do think that Kamala being a woman makes a difference. I think that we as a country are still not yet ready to elect a female president, even if she's truly the right person for the job. I just don't, I think that plays a part. I don't think they would have criticized Biden, or if Biden had run and lost. I don't think they'd be saying the same things. I think that they sort of feel like there's a void in leadership, and that's when people start to just kind of go on their own agendas. Now you're right, though. I mean, for the sake of loyalty, there's a sacrifice everybody makes where you just keep your mouth shut and you stay loyal to the team. And I think that the frustrations are gonna emerge because the beating was so bad, and the hope is gone. And I think everybody's just upset, and I don't know if they're speaking out of emotionality or a strategy, but yeah, this is really showing just sort of how that coalition has just crumbled. Because think about this. I mean, if you know that what you believe in and what you've been trumpeting and what you've been fighting for is horrifically unpopular in the country right now, why do you want to be associated with that? I expect these people to pivot. They're politicians. They're not going to stand in the line of fire and say, yeah, I stand on the shit that everybody else hates right now. I think they're going to move over and say, no, really, what I would have done if I was running this, So I kind of expect that, and it's actually quite funny to watch, because you had these Negro minions like the DL Hugleys and other people literally getting on Twitter fighting people. DL called and personally cussed me out. That was an honor to be cussed out. 5 minutes. He threatened to beat me up and did all this other stuff. Like, it was a real gangster move from a comedian. I said, "What?" I said, first of all, fool, I know karate, but second of all, why are we even having this conversation? This is weird, But yeah, so apparently that showed me that it's really gotten to him. That shows me that. Yeah. That makes me say you don't really believe the shit that you're doing, because if you were confident enough to stand on what you believe, you wouldn't even waste your time getting on the phone with somebody like me, taking the time to cuss me out. Like, that doesn't even make any, that's not even logical. You choose your side and you fight for it, but I don't think that a lot of the fights were genuine. I think that as Kamala's doling out that $1 billion, right? Everybody's getting paid, everybody's making money. And a lot of those endorsements were just celebrities just making appearances, just like they would do a concert, in exchange for money. And I think that what this really showed us is that the American people can now have a bigger voice. And here's the thing, too. This is another reason why I'm very happy that the Democrats didn't get elected, is because I think they fear that voice. They fear these people. They have these big podcast platforms with millions of followers. They fear the Joe Rogans and people like that. So they would have regulated all of that. They would, I believe, I agree with Musk when he said if they get elected, they're going to try to shut Twitter down. I don't know if they would have shut it down completely, but they sure as hell would have regulated the shit out of it, right? So I'm a free speech guy. I say if you disagree, let's have a debate. Don't try to censor people, even if someone uses the N-word. I don't believe they should be censored. I just, because it's an ugly path to go down. Just stand up and debate the ideas you believe in and leave it at that. That's what a free country's supposed to do, in my opinion.
Okay. There's, as far as, the Democratic Party and the censorship, I have to push back just a little bit, because I think that the Democratic Party, yes, they will censor, but I think the Republican Party would equally censor. It just depends on what that censorship is. I think that the things that we fear that the Democratic Party would do, the Republican Party is also going to do. This is why, when I look at, either side, I see both just two sides of the same dragon fight. So as far as, the office of the Department of Efficiency, of governmental efficiency, rather, I think that they will try to use that efficiency to cut vital programs that is absolutely necessary for Americans. But at the same time, when it comes to the efficiency they're trying to keep, they will keep the subsidies going to the big corporations. They will keep the war machine going. They will keep the Pentagon in its bloated budget. So I don't think that it will actually result in real efficiency, because if they wanted to be really efficient, they would actually give us single payer healthcare or a nationalized healthcare system, which will actually be cheaper for us in the long run with being fiscally responsible. or they would start doing more investments in schools, especially in schools that are predominantly Black. And instead of having our property taxes paying for those schools, then it would just be making sure that it is an equitable type of system where they give the schools that are struggling the most a little bit more money so that those can be brought up to par. And so then in the long run, it'll actually benefit us, without having to spend as much money. It just feels like, the Republican Party really is just putting an efficiency face on something that the Democratic Party would do anyway.
Well, I think you make a great point. I can't even disagree with you on any of that because, I mean, a lot of the fiscal mess that the government's in, I blame that on the Republicans. I think it started back when Reagan almost got killed, and he was able to pass through all these big tax cuts, and then we had this 80s era where everybody believed greed was good, and they also orchestrated the destruction of labor unions and things like that so that the capitalists could make more money. That's when they were pushing, fairy tales like trickle down economics, which we know does not work. And as a result of that, America never really recovered from that. I think the last time America was truly great economically anyway was the 1960s. That's when we did everything right. You still had your wealthy people and your CEOs making money, but you had, a good living wage for everybody. And you had workers' rights, you had unions and things like that. And they just dismantled all of that because we became addicted to capitalism. And circling back in terms of the government, when you get because money is the poison in the government that keeps us from having a true democracy. In my view, America is a capitalist democracy. Capitalism is the big brother. Democracy is the little brother, and the big brother beats up the little brother and takes his lunch every day. The capitalism drives the democracy. So you are correct. You're voting for Jill Stein puts you in the unfortunate position of being too intelligent for this dumbass system. That's what it is. You're smart. You think for yourself. And studies show that 70% of all people will follow the crowd, even if they know that the crowd is wrong. So when you have people that are like, wait, what is this shit? This is crazy. You're in the minority. And that's what makes it difficult because you get argued down by your relatives and people who aren't thinking about this sort of thing. And so because they're stuck in fear, like, well, what about the Republicans? What about the Democrats? And so you are right, though. Everything you said is correct. I can see Elon Musk. Remember, Elon Musk is a capitalist. He's a businessman. So is Trump. You're right. When they go in there and they claim to pursue efficiency, they're going to cut a lot of programs that are designed for poor and working class people. That is a tragedy. That is a problem. I think that the best thing I tell my students in the Black Business School is I say, okay, so what are we going to do now? What's the solution? I don't think voting for the Democrats is the solution necessarily because our wealth has never increased under either group. So how about we focus on ourselves? How about we take the opportunities that do exist? We can build those Black-owned businesses. We can support each other. We can invest in the stock market. There's no whites-only sign on that stock market. And as a result, I can tell you, I had a lot of students, and these are regular working class people from, everything from the hood and beyond, right? Every demographic is represented. All of them were ecstatic after the election because they made a ton of money when all these stocks rose up because of who got elected. Right. And so I personally think that managing our economics has to be the key. It sucks to have to tell everybody, hey, you got to own stock. You got to be an investor of some sort to survive in this economy. But that's the only reality I know, unless you know how to change the political system and turn our politicians from something other than a bunch of corrupt bastards who are paid off by corporations. If we can do that, then that's great. But I don't see how we get there because I don't think the Supreme Court's going to, push through the types of ideas that and the laws that we need to get the money out of politics. Once the money's in, it's really hard to get the money out. And that really is the problem in America. America is driven by money. Capitalism is the religion of America.
That was actually, I think you kind of drifted into my question of where do we go from here? Is that pretty much your answer to, what we need to do in order to push forward now that the election's over?
You know what I would say is wealth is a part of it, but wealth isn't the whole thing, right? All money is not good money. Money should not be your God. Money is simply a necessary tool that can allow you to pursue the things that matter more than money, like freedom, happiness, mental health, physical health. And every study shows that our mental health is wrecked. Gen Z is financially screwed. Physical health is going in the toilet. Almost half of everybody's going to catch cancer at some point because the corporations are giving you this poisonous food that's not allowed in any other country. So that means that if you focus on the three of the biggest measures of quality of life, health, wealth, and relationships, it's up to individuals and families to make decisions that are going to position you in the best light in those areas. So we need families. We can't build a community off a bunch of babies, mamas, and baby daddies. That ain't going to work. We know this. We know all the statistics around that. That's something that can be studied. We have access to all the information we need. There are people online that can help us figure out, how do I be a better mother? How do I become a better father? How do I raise kids? How do I keep my marriage together? Right? How does our family work together to achieve goals together? When you talk about mental health and physical health, same thing, right? Financial health, it pretty much comes down to building wealth consistently and financial security. So people don't realize that if you simply change the culture of what you do with your economics, just saving a little bit, like the same amount of money you spend on fast food or whatever, that you can actually build a decent amount of wealth if you're consistent with that. So ultimately, I argue that rather than fighting for the broader systematic changes, which are really important, by the way, if I had the power to do that, I would. I say, let's start family by family. Right. I'm not worried about what's happening in the White House. I want to know what's happening in your house, because there's a lot that you can control right there in your house in terms of how you raise your kids, how you treat your wife, what you do with your money, what you do with your time, what you do with your mind. And I believe that people who focus on that are able to win in America. Everybody in America ain't struggling. Everybody in America ain't, under the carpet. And I think it would be false to believe that. We are still the richest country on earth. Black people still have 1.6 trillion in wealth. If we were a country, we'd be one of the 10 or 11 richest countries on the planet. So we've got something to work with. We just have to think a little bit and stop worrying about what these bastards in Capitol Hill are doing. That's my 2 cents.
As far as what we need to do, one of the biggest things that, and those of us here on RBN, we focus a lot on is building mutual aid, building dual power, and helping our community so that we can come together more. While it is advantageous for us to have a better financial literacy in order to be able to survive, so that you don't become a liability, when it comes to others helping. I think it's also best for us to provide a collectivist approach in order so that we can actually circumvent the system in order to build something anew. The reason why the system is the way it is because we take a very individualistic approach to our own salvation, to our own liberation. And so if we continue down this road, we're going to end up on an island of one. And so I tried to take the Black Panther Party approach through building collective power, through actually doing things like mutual aid, building dual power. Mutual aid can be done in many different ways. And as far as, the wealth of Black people, yes, we may have, 1 to 2 trillion, among us, but that wealth is still concentrated up at the top. It's not spread throughout. And so you're going to have people like the Oprah Winfreys and the Tyler Perrys that are going to keep and hoard their wealth, just like the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos, because they are trying to be like them. And just like what Fred Hampton said, you will not beat capitalism with Black capitalism, but you have to beat it with socialism. And the thing is that ultimately we have to walk away from a system. But the best way to do that is by circumventing it, by doing what we can for our communities, by pooling our resources together in order to save ourselves. And by save ourselves, I mean those of us in the working class, because ultimately we're going to be destroyed by these people who are at the top, these corporate dictators, because they're going to take this system, Basically they say that you can have this system over our dead bodies, and we're going to have to be walking over a couple of people. So we're going to have to do the best way we possibly can.
Yeah, brother. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you. I don't. I admit I'm not a big fan of too many isms, right? I'm definitely not into capitalism because I see the good and the bad of it. Capitalism is a powerful economic driver, but extreme capitalism becomes slavery. It turns into slavery. And so when I talk to my students about economics, I say I'm a believer in free enterprise. I'm a believer in business development. I'm a believer in a double, maybe triple bottom line that can't just be capitalist in the sense of, my goal is to make as much money as possible. I don't think that's a healthy outcome, right? Because you hurt people that way. So my point would be that I think that when you are trying to really understand what your next move is, I encourage everyone to study every type of system and to be able to appreciate the value brought by that system. So you study Marxism, Karl Marx had a lot of great critiques of capitalism. They were right on point. Capitalism does a lot of things. It steals your joy. It steals your time. It takes you away from your kids. It ruins the family. It works people into the ground, doesn't pay them enough, does all these things. But so what do I do now? Do I believe that somehow there's that there's some sort of that I'm a more virtuous man because I'm broke? No, I can't. I don't have a lot of power now, and if you look at the Black Panthers, as admirable as they were, I don't think that they had the right model, because if they did, it would have survived. And now I know that there were people that sabotaged it. I know, when you come in there fighting, when you come out guns blazing, they're going to shoot back. But when I think about things like the free lunch program, I say, well, why did it have to be the free lunch program? Why couldn't it be the 25-cent lunch program so they could raise some money to pay the people that are dedicating their lives to this purpose? Because here's the deal. If you do free lunch, then people come and eat your free lunch, but then they go right down to the white man's liquor store and they give him $5 that they should have given you. So my belief is it could have been subsidized to say, look, if you have no money, then it's free. But if you got money in your pocket, you need to support us. We're asking the community to help us get this job done. And because I know you're about to go down to that grocery store, that liquor store, that beauty salon and spend money over there. You're not going to mistreat us and treat the oppressor in a certain way. So I think that free enterprise, it might be the solution. I think money matters. We talk about money all the time. People not being able to pay the bills and the grocery prices getting too high, a living wage. Money is really important. So I think economic independence goes a long way if it's intelligently applied. It goes a long way to achieving all the things in life that really matter, like your freedom, like your family, like your well-being, like your happiness, things like that. So I think that there's a blend. So I'm not a capitalist, but I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist, not a Marxist. I'm just a Black man trying to figure this shit out. That's the goal.
Well, one thing I will say is when it comes to the free lunch program, the breakfast program, in a way, it did kind of live on because the public school system.
True.
They kind of took that model from the Black Panthers and implemented that in the public school system.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't, and I hope it didn't sound like I was criticizing the Panthers at all. I mean, they were braver than I am. They did some amazing work. I just believe I can say, though, I've seen really powerful movements fail because there was nobody there to pay the bills. Even the civil rights movement, Dr. King needed the business owners to write a check so he could pay the payroll. Think about it. You spend the whole weekend protesting capitalism, but then you got to put your picket sign down on Monday because you got to go work for a capitalist so you can pay the bills. How about you form an economic engine that funds the movement so that you can do the work and then have enough money so that you don't have to go and support the very same system you're fighting against. So because remember, capitalism is built on slavery. It feeds off of economic desperation. So if I am a leader and I'm an activist, my first goal is to make sure I give you the bare necessities, the basics that you need financially so you can pay bills, and then we get back to business. Can't nobody go and be an activist if your children are hungry? Or if your wife ain't got a pair of shoes, or you're about to be evicted, that's going to take top priority. So I would almost argue that that activism going forward has to have some sort of economic element that goes beyond asking for donations. Donations, I don't think sustains you in what we're trying to deal with. I think every single person in our community who wants to be free and successful should make sure their kids know how to go make some money and do it in an ethical way. If they do that, then you can get the money out of the way, and then you're free to do whatever you want. Because the way they control you is through money. That's most of the racism is driven by money. Most Black people I know, their biggest fear is not, oh, am I going to get shot by a cop today? That does happen, but that's not their biggest fear for a lot of people. Their biggest stressor is, I got to get up and go to work for this person who hates my guts, and I have to do it because if I don't, I'm going to be homeless. So I think we should raise our kids to be economically independent so that they can really get out here and really fight. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Maybe, and I think Garvey understood that kind of thing. And so I think we should look at all the models and formulate something that's going to get the job done, not just sort of pick one model over the other. Because even the influence, even when I would look and I would see the influence of the communists and the socialists on the Black community, I would say, well, who the hell brought that in? What white man in Europe decided, oh, I'm going to use these people to pursue some other agenda that I already had back, when I was in Germany or Italy? I don't, I think that there are so many insidious factors that underlie our movements to the point where even the Black Lives Matter movement was suspect a little bit, because it's like, wait, what's happening here? Some of this does not connect to the core of what African American people are going through. And it came from somebody else. So we're being manipulated all the time by lots of people. And it's not just the capitalists. It's not just the people on the right. I think the left has manipulated us in a horrible way for a very long time. And I don't want that. I want sovereignty, period.
Are you familiar with A. Philip Randolph?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was reading about him recently. And one of the things is, and of course, he crossed paths with a lot of different activists, so many different people. He had critiques of Garvey. And one of them was that he felt that Marcus Garvey was one of the people that was actually limiting. He was a hindrance on the movement that A. Philip Randolph was trying to do, because Marcus Garvey, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understood about Marcus Garvey, he kind of wanted Black people to have their own place that they could go to in Africa. But at the same time, according to A. Philip Randolph, he was kind of surprised to find out that Marcus Garvey was also willing to side with the Klan on certain issues.
Interesting.
So I don't really know if Marcus Garvey, and I know a lot of people bring him up, but I don't really know if Marcus Garvey is necessarily the right person to look to, because it seemed like in the end, Marcus Garvey was trying to look out for himself. He was willing to throw Black people under the bus if it worked out for him. That's the impression I got. It's a book. I can show you. I can show you I'll send you a picture of it. I see a picture of the cover of the book, so you know what book I'm talking about. But it's about A. Philip Randolph.
That's a great point. I didn't know about his critique of Garvey. I don't consider that any of that to be impossible. I wasn't there at that time, and we tend to look back at people from previous eras like they were perfect, and a lot of them were not. And for all I know, that could be accurate. I would say that it's really, I think critical thinking and consciousness is really important for Black people, because I think that before you follow something, you have to make sure it makes sense. And when you look at a leader, you cannot elevate someone to the point of being so godlike that you don't question anything that they do. And you have to accept the idea that there are going to be some things about that person you don't agree with. Like, I love Malcolm X. I do. He's one of my top two people of all time. Him and Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X are my two greatest heroes of all time, right? I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I walked the same streets. My grandma went to high school with him, so he inspired me, because I was like, man, if this guy from my little hometown could change the world, then we can do anything. But when I look at their lives, there are so many things. If I told you all the things I critiqued about each of them, you would think I didn't like either one of them. you would think I hated Ali. If I pointed out the mistakes he made, oh, he was boxing for way too long. He messed around with his money. He brought too many women in his life. He shouldn't have done what he did to Malcolm X. Like, I could keep going down the list, right? But and I think that critical thinking ability matters because yeah, if you follow anyone blindly, I think that you're gonna probably find some stuff that doesn't sit right with you. And it's okay to do that as long as you understand at some point you might end up having to support something that you wouldn't support otherwise. Because I've done that too. Sometimes I've said, like Louis Farrakhan, I'm deeply loyal to Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, but I've seen things that have happened where I've been like, I don't understand that. I don't agree with that. But because I chose that team, then that's my team, period. Right? So I think that when you talk about Garvey, yeah, he probably was a guy that did some things right, but he was probably flawed because he was human. W.E.B. Du Bois, same thing. A. Philip Randolph, same thing. Martin Luther King, same thing. Malcolm X, same thing. Ain't none of these individuals, Jesus, or even Jesus, did he even exist? I don't know, right? So my point is to say that I think you have to find your way to navigate as your own leader. That's my point. I believe the greatest Black leader in America is inside of you, because only you know your situation, only you know your values, only you know your life, and you've got to lead yourself into a place where you can be content and happy. I don't think I'm not a big fan of any of this, like, oh, this one guy or this one movement is going to fix everything. There is no one movement. Every movement has flaws, in my opinion.
All right. Well, look, can you let everybody know where they can find you and what projects you also have coming up in the near future?
Sure. Wealth is my thing. I'm a finance professor. I taught at Syracuse University for a lot of years and some other campuses, and Black wealth really matters to me. And in the Black Business School, we have 169,000 students around the world, and we are the best on earth at solving the Black wealth problem. We've already solved it. We already know the solution. It just has to be implemented. And we do. I do a free daily class. It's 100% free. It's called Financial Consciousness, aka Economic Elevation. And literally every morning at 10 a.m., I meet about 1,000 students and online, and we just talk about money every morning, because one of the things that I wrote about in my last book, which is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, is that our biggest problem economically, it's not access to resources necessarily. It's not access to knowledge necessarily. It is culture and habits. And so if you form the right culture, form the right habits, culture will inform you more about economics than any college class ever will. So by meeting every day, every single morning, 7 days a week, and we've been doing this for a while, our goal is to shape culture. And it's working. It's very effective. We have lots of families that have seen their economic conditions skyrocket, because literally what I do is I give you a brain dump and tell you what I see as a finance professor in terms of where the money's at. So the best way to get access to the money is to go where the money is. So if people want to join, they can pull out their phone, text the word money to the number 87948. So text money to 87948, and I'll send you an invitation to class. And I guarantee you're going to get something from it. So that's it.
All right. Thank you so very much to Dr. Boyce Watkins for joining us. All right. Take care.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was great. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So I have a few thoughts in my head, but I just wanted to make sure that we got through, having a great conversation. And as far as, we're going to have people on here who we may have some disagreements with. Of course, I do have some of mine. We didn't have enough time to go through and hash out a lot of what happened. But of course, we can always, have them back on to, have a discussion. But one of the things that I wanted to get into was some of those chats, some of the super chats, if there's any type of Rumble rants or anything like that. So we're going to go to that. Let me check to see if we have any Rumble rants really quick.
Rant.
All right. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, did you guys make sure to please like the stream? That helps us out very much. Thank you very much for that. Now, let's go into the super chats. Let me see. This one is from Kristen Ruiz, says, it's the same objective as mutual aid, to empower the working class materially to be able to use some of their time for activism and building power. You know,
yeah. I understand where he's coming from. I mean, I think part of the reason why we don't have as many people out, although, we've had some protests where there's been hundreds of thousands of people out in the street if it's on the weekend. But I noticed the reason why we don't have that on a consistent basis is because the reality is people do have to go to work, right? So people can't just quit their jobs to, protest 20. You know what, JB, I would be interested to see how much money, how much they raise during remember the March on Washington?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to see how much money they had to raise.
Yeah. My thing is as the old saying goes, many hands make the load light. So not everybody's going to be a full-time activist where there are just working out on the ground. In my view, the most realistic thing is, you do your part when you have free time, even getting your kids involved if you can, if it is age appropriate, right? Like feeding people, clothing people, things like that. Ultimately, thinking that, people aren't, as far as the money aspect is concerned, the thing is you can't tie capitalism to building mutual aid and dual power, because if you do that, then that means you're just a charity.
Right. Yeah, because there's a difference between mutual aid and charity, you guys.
Yeah. And also, capitalism is not making money. Capitalism is about who owns what. There's a difference between capitalism and commerce. Commerce is the ability to buy and sell. Capitalism is who owns it. It is one person who owns the means of production and extracts the surplus value out of the workers, and the workers are exploited as a means in order to be able to make more money for the person at the top. That's what capitalism is. And so I think that there's a confusion sometimes of what capitalism is versus socialism being workers owning the means of production and distribution, and then democratically running the workplace and operating it collectively, like, say, for instance, a worker co-op.
Right.
So once you get to that, then you start to see that, well, you know what? We can do mutual aid without having to ask for money, and everybody's putting in their part little by little in order to make a new system. I wanted to get into that, but we could do it to the sake of time. Thank you. LMA says, Dr. Boyce Watkins, why did you recommend the TREF to the BC? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
I tell people all the time, guys, I'm not good with the abbreviations.
Meaning, look, I'm LGBTQ, but I don't know what QRSTUP is. Compassion is Power says, animal rights are the logical extension of human rights. We cannot be liberated from capitalism without animal liberation. Watch Dominion. Legumes saves money. Understood. I may not fully agree, but understood. Thank you very much. We have Michael Pan says, Dr. Watkins is a covert capitalist because he money. Thank you very much for that. Let's continue. Did I miss any super chats? Did you see any super chats that I may have missed? I think I got them all. Okay. All right. Well, let's go into, let me check the Rockfin. Okay, we're good on Rockfin. All right. That's good there. LMA says the turf was the Tulsa Real Estate Fund.
Okay. I don't know what that is, but
I don't know. Still, I'm still a little bit lost on that one. I would have to look that up, but thank you very much for that. So, Sabs, what do you have going on this evening?
Yep. So I'll be live on my channel tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. I have 5 news stories to discuss. And tomorrow night, make sure you join me Friday as well at 8 p.m. Eastern, because I have a special guest who has some things to say. They have some things to get off their shoulder. So
the chest.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention who it is yet, because I don't want them to get pushed, but I want them to be able to say what they want to say. So you'll find out tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Eric says tea will be spilled. Oh, this is going to be good. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this one. All right. So now let me go into, I wanted to do this just to let you guys know. We actually have shared the GoFundMe to Rome. If you guys have not seen, that is pinned to the top of the chat. We cannot speak on exactly what's going on due to legal purposes, but if you guys would like to, you guys can go to Rome's GoFundMe so that you guys are able to contribute. We would like to see him, liberated. So thank you very much. Here's what's raised so far. And
did they meet the goal?
Yes, that's the goal.
No, but I think they met the goal. No?
Looks like it. Looks like the goal. But I'll put it this way. Unexpected expenses do occur, so I'm still going to share it anyway. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Rome that we are trying to help him with his legal services. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also help out with that. Thank you so very much.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because I didn't realize it had already. I know someone had mentioned on Twitter that they needed about 800 or something more. So it looks like they already met that. So that's good.
Now, with that being said, we're going to give a shout out to patrons on Patreon. We're going to end with this. Without you guys, we would not be able to do this type of work. You guys make this possible. We appreciate every single one of you. And look, the type of work that we do, we do have the RBN chapters, all over the United States. We have me and Savvy's in Boston. I'm in Orlando. You have Nick that's in Kansas City, and you have Rome that's in Detroit. And so we try to do what we can to build dual power, to build solidarity among our communities. And if you guys would like to, this is the type of work that we do. And we appreciate, any type of support. And we do, the work on the ground that we try to do as much as possible. And we try to bring the news to you from a Black left lens. And so without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this. And we just want to give a huge thank you from the top and bottom of our hearts. It has meant the most. And so I just, thank you guys for this. And please continue to support independent media wherever possible. And by the way, support independent media. Go ahead and see Savvy Sabs at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we're out. Any last words, Sabs?
Peace. Deuces.
Deuces, Bruces.
I forgot it was muted.
Uh-oh.